Are screens a source of stress in your family? I am willing to bet the answer is yes. Not just because you're listening to this episode, but because I think almost every single parent that I know is struggling with this in some way or another. So, this is a huge topic, and it's not one we're going to cover comprehensively in just one episode. There will be more episodes on the podcast, I promise. Including in a future episode, or maybe multiple, I will share my own thoughts and approach to screen time, which is always evolving and is not one size fits all. But there's no better way, I think, to open this topic and conversation on the podcast than with this interview that I have for you today. It's a conversation with Ash Brandin. You may be more familiar with them from Instagram as TheGamerEducator. They are also the author of the best-selling book, Power On, Managing Screen Time to Benefit the Whole Family. And yes, that includes you, the parent. This debuted in August 2025. I'm going to link to it in the show notes. Ash's content on Instagram is also well worth a watch. They really do a beautiful job of empowering families to make screen time sustainable, manageable, and beneficial for the whole family. Ash is also a middle school teacher, so they have some really great perspective on this, not just in the early years with little ones, but also as our kids grow and probably are using screens even more. This episode is a bit longer than my typical episodes because it is such a juicy topic, and honestly, I wish we had even more time. I really do think that it's worth a full listen, and there are some great points that I really want you to hear all the way at the end. So please, I invite you to listen all the way through. I do want to make a quick note before the full episode. Ash mentions in this episode a few times the division of responsibility in feeding. It is an approach to feeding developed by Ellen Satter in the 1980s, was I think when she first published about it. And this is something that I'm already planning on discussing in a more deep dive in a later future episode. The general gist, the general idea is that the parent's role in feeding is to determine what, when, and where food is served. And the child's responsibility is to determine whether they eat it, how they eat it, and how much they eat it. Now, there are some things that I really love about this model, especially the part about not pressuring or forcing our kids to eat. It's a very powerful mindset shift for a lot of families that can really, really be beautiful and is very much aligned with my overall parenting approach. I do want to say, though, there are some pieces of it, especially on the parent side, in terms of what the parent's responsible for and how they do it, that we might need to bring some nuance to and some modifications to, especially when working with neurodivergent kids and even more so any kids with PDA. I don't have time to go into all of that right now. Like I said, we'll address it more later. In the meantime, I'm going to link to a Substack article by Virginia Soul Smith that starts to address some of what I'm talking about. So I'll put that in the notes. For now, though, I hope that you enjoy this episode. I found it to be incredibly eye-opening. I think there's going to be some, I might even say, mind-blowing perspectives and points in here that I think will be really helpful as you navigate this really sticky and tricky topic in your own home. And of course, if you have any questions about this, or you do want more personalized support with this or any other parenting challenge, please feel free to reach out to me. I will put my email and also a link to book a free consult call in the show notes as well. All right, let's dive in. Welcome to Single Parenting with Connection, Not Perfection, the podcast that honors your messy reality. It's the support you crave without the usual emotional landmines. I'm your host, Dr. Gila, and I promise I will never tell you to just tag your partner in. Before we start, quick reminder. While I am a licensed psychologist and a certified coach, this podcast is not coaching and it's not therapy and it's not a replacement for medical or psychological advice. It is for educational and informational purposes only. All right, let's dive in. Ash, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat with you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So, screens is, oh my God, it's like the hot topic, I think. If there was one topic that I think comes up most consistently right now for parents, it would be screens. So, very timely, very topical. And I've been reading your book, and it has so many great little nuggets in it. I know we're not going to cover all of it, but I'm excited to dive into some of it. I thought that we could start with, you talk a lot about neutrality, and I would love for you to share with the listeners what you mean about that and why you feel like that is like such an important core tenet when we're thinking about screens.
I'm glad that you want to start there because I think it's very hard to talk about any of the management or minutia if we aren't first starting from that place of framing ourselves in a neutral perspective when it comes to screens. And the first third of my book is sort of devoted to that in some way. And I read a fair amount of nonfiction, and I always get annoyed when I open it and I am starting the book and I'm really interested in it because of, what probably comes at the very end. And then I'm like, oh no, we have to read like 100 pages of like foundational backstory. No,
Yeah.
why? And then I wrote a book and I was like, all right, we got to start
Yeah.
with all this foundation. And I don't know, I've become what I disliked.
I've had the same experience
Yeah.
as a parent coach because we really do need to talk about some of the foundations before we can get to some of the practical stuff.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the more practical things that I mentioned in the book or in my work elsewhere, they wouldn't make sense, or wouldn't work, or would work very differently if they weren't framed in a perspective of neutrality.
Right.
So the reason I think that neutrality is so key is I think that it allows us as caregivers or as parents to really be able to focus on what is best for our kids or what is needed in a given situation without responding or reacting to what we might be afraid of or what we might be bringing with us from our own fears or kind of projecting onto ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say something like, have a consistently available screen time, have it be consistent. That's one of the things that I recommend. But if a parent is coming to that still feeling really like resentful of screens and thinking like, okay, fine, I'll let them play every day, but they're still really feeling like that's a waste of time and they should be doing something else, then it's easy to see what would happen. Like you can kind of project forward and think, okay, as soon as that kid were to struggle, for example, to stop playing,
Mm-hmm.
that parent is going to immediately think, see, I knew it. I knew having it every day wasn't going to help because it's the screen and it's bad and I shouldn't have said yes to this. And now we're
Mm-hmm.
blaming. And that doesn't really help us. Like it feels somewhat satisfying because it kind of absolves us of our fear that maybe we're the problem or our kid is the problem or our parenting is the problem. And I think a lot of that obviously is coming from, a guilt and a responsibility that we feel rightfully to do right by our kids. But, there's so much of parenting is just trying things, right? Just
Mm.
trying things and being open and accepting that not everything is going to work for every kid. And when a certain, sleep sack doesn't work for a baby or a certain routine doesn't work, we don't blame those things in terms of their like morality, but we
Mm-hmm.
are quick to do that with screens. And the reality is that kids see things like screen time and games as leisure and they see it as worthy of doing. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we don't come in with neutrality, then we run the risk of basically seeing their interests as lesser than,
Mm.
as invalid, as in some way lesser. And that just kind of immediately sets us up for a power struggle, right? Like
Yeah.
it immediately puts us in opposition to our child with video games in the middle or screens in the middle. And that's
Yeah.
just not a very productive place to start from.
Right.
Right. So the neutrality allows us to kind of be on the same side as our kid. It doesn't mean that we are doing everything they want. Right? It doesn't mean that we uh, are overstepping our own boundaries. But in the same way that I might view, another part of my kid's life as neutral, while also trying to make sure it works for us,
Mhm.
the neutrality allows me to do that with technology without immediately kind of assuming a blame or a guilt,
Mm.
because all that's going to do is make me feel bad. It's not going
Yeah.
to help me tomorrow when inevitably I'm back in the same position. So I just think it
Right.
allows us to be a lot more practical and look for things that are a lot more empowering.
Yeah, and it seems like if you do have this sort of heavy filter that you're coming into it with, that would also potentially get in the way of connecting with your child around it and also like being curious and being open to learning new information. Like I can tell you, I have learned a lot about Minecraft. I have learned not all Minecraft is created equal. There are different things you can do on Minecraft that are more dysregulating than others, at least for my child. And that's been fascinating and, not something that I initially came into it understanding. And I do wonder if that's part of what's so hard for, I'm Gen X. I know a lot of millennial Gen Xers, like we didn't grow up with these TV shows, we didn't grow up with social media. And so we are still kind of wrapping our heads around like this is the latest of we don't really understand what it is. And one thing I really appreciate about you is I know that you do a lot of gaming and you play games with your kids. And so you have some insight into this that maybe some of us don't understand as well.
Yeah. I mean, I do play. I have to say, I haven't really played a video game in like months. Not,
Okay.
not because I have sworn them off,
Yeah.
but it's just like I'm not in that area of my life right now for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Actually, I just did over the weekend. Now that I think about it, I wasn't thinking of it as a video game, but it technically was. Booted up like a sort of a version of like Guitar Hero, and was
I
playing
loved
that.
Guitar Hero.
Yes, I
So
played that with
fun.
some friends. That was super fun.
Yeah.
But, like you were speaking, I'm kind of the elder millennial, but that same age, that age range, right? Kids who are really, growing up or coming into their own in like the 90s,
Hmm.
or even early 2000s, we say like, well, we didn't have social media, we didn't have these kinds of media, but we had our versions of it to a degree, right? Like
Mm,
video games obviously existed.
definitely.
TV shows obviously existed.
Definitely.
Media that we found interesting that made adults in our lives kind of roll their eyes and go
Yeah.
like, "Ugh, would you put that down and go outside?" Right? Like
Hmm.
that existed. And so I
Yeah.
think even being able to tap into that and remember how that felt, and not in a way of like, well, yeah, because I was a kid and I didn't know better, but more in like thinking about the purpose that served and how it made us feel, and how did it make us feel when the adults in our lives either did or did not like
Hmm.
see the validity in that, or at least seem to appreciate our interest in it.
Yeah.
And how did that serve us or not serve us? And the media is obviously going to change, uh,
Right.
forever, right?
Right.
But we can bring in that same perspective. And you brought up Minecraft. I do not like Minecraft, not my kind of game. I don't enjoy it. It's not really
Yeah.
my kids thing either, but it's definitely it's a game that a lot of people really enjoy, a lot of kids really enjoy. So like with
Hmm.
students, if they're really into Minecraft, like in the same way that if a kid were really into roller derby, about which I know nothing,
Hmm.
right? I would still show interest. Like, I'd wanna
Yeah.
connect with them, I would ask them about it, I would want to know more about it because I want to care, like, I care about them.
Yeah.
And so I think we worry that if we show interest in something, we're, like, condoning it. And
Mm.
for one thing, that assumes that if we weren't going to condone it, that our kid wouldn't do it. And if
Right.
that were true, then parenting would be a lot simpler, right?
It sure would.
Um but, in most cases can like showing interest is not the same thing as like being okay with it in any way for any amount of time, right? Like
Mhm.
I can show interest in the clothing that my kid is interested in, even if I also know like, oh my gosh, you're going to regret that when you look back at your
Mhm.
yearbook in 10 years, right?
Right.
So that I think also is something that neutrality helps with, that
Right.
I'm not fearful of like, oh, but if I watch them play Minecraft, then they'll think it's fine. It's like, well, they're already playing it. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we probably want them to feel like they can come to us about this thing. And I think
Yeah.
neutrality helps with that for sure.
Yeah, and I was realizing as you were talking, I think maybe MTV might be like a good analogy there because music videos was a
Mm,
newer thing that a lot of parents maybe couldn't like wrap their heads around why that was enjoyable.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and so neutrality, when you talk about neutrality around screens, can you help the audience understand what do you mean exactly by that?
Yes, I think sometimes when people hear me say neutrality, they assume that I mean like abstinence of boundaries, which is not what I mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that if something is neutral, that somehow I'm not in control of it.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, most parts of a kid's day are neutral in terms of like their morality, but we are still in
Mm-hmm.
control of them, right? Like I don't I don't associate a morality with like meals or bath time
Mm-hmm.
or like reading books before bed, but I still will have boundaries around those things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say that, you know, it's bad if my kid wants to be in the bathtub longer than I want them to, that it's like the fault of them or the bathtub. But I am still going to say, like, no, it's time to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, you can imagine how absurd it would sound if they didn't want to get out of the bathtub, which especially with young kids is like constant. Like
Mm-hmm.
they always want to not do the thing we want them to do. That's just
Right.
developmentally appropriate, right? You can imagine how it would sound in that moment if I was like, I knew it. I knew it. The warm water is too nice and the bubbles are too fun and you're addicted to baths and we can't ever have baths again. Like I sound unhinged, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people will say, well, but screens aren't the same as baths. Yeah, absolutely. They aren't. Playgrounds aren't the
Mm-hmm.
same as baths. Meals aren't the same. Like no two things are exactly the same. But the neutrality allows me to kind of not take the bait of blaming the thing,
Mm-hmm.
because now I've made the screen the problem, but again, it just doesn't help me do anything differently. So the
Mm-hmm.
neutrality is really looking at like kind of the morality. I make a lot of comparisons to food.
Yeah.
I spot a lot of Gen X or elder millennial. You know, we had depending on how we were raised, but a lot of us were kind of raised in this very diet culture
Yeah.
informed, you know, snack well, 100-calorie snack packs, low fat era, and then you know a lot of the culture was promoting thinness and anti-fatness, and you know, I think a lot of us recognize that that wasn't great for our
Mm-hmm.
relationships with food and eating, and
Yeah.
that a lot of that had to do with the moralizing of food, right? That
Mm-hmm.
there were good foods and bad foods. And we've seen kind of this pendulum swing back the other way towards sort of the division of responsibility model of food and eating, of parents decide what is available and when meals are available, and kids decide how much to eat of what's available.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that model really serves well when looking at technology, because
Yeah.
I can talk about all of the foods that are available in a meal with equal moral value, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the bread with butter is not morally worse than the chicken or the carrots,
Yeah.
right? But they might have different nutritional properties. They
Yeah.
might do different things for our bodies. They might be better or worse to eat if I'm about to go, you know, be on a play date for 4 hours and not have time to have a snack, right? We can
Mm-hmm.
talk about the purpose. We can talk about what they're doing for us. We can talk about what we notice and how they affect us. And I think applying something like that to technology is way more useful, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
think about our own relationship with something like food. If someone had told me to think about like, how do you feel after you eat this thing? That would have served me a lot better than,
Yeah.
oh, you ate junk. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, great. because I'm not going
Yeah.
to feel great about myself after that instead of
Yeah.
noticing what it's doing for myself. And I think applying that to technology is
Uh-huh.
can do much the same.
Yeah, so I also see a lot of parallels, and I've brought this up with clients as well. See a lot of parallels with food and technology. The thing is that I actually think that there is still a lot of morality wrapped up in food and feeding and eating. And that, so for example, a parent might do the same thing that you said with screens, but with sugar, right? Like,
Oh
see, I
yeah.
knew you shouldn't have had sugar. We go in with ideas and of, hypotheses that we sort of assume are true. And then any confirming evidence, right? We sort of black and white that, and it's harder to see the evidence against it. I think there is a lot of morality around food still in my in my experience and observation.
Unfortunately, I think
Um,
you're right. I think
yeah,
the trend is kind of
yeah,
away from that, but I
yeah.
think you're speaking to a good point, which is that as the adage goes, more is caught than taught, right? Like we
Mm,
can have an idea of what to do and then or maybe what is kind of best practice, but we're still going to end up kind of defaulting to certain things. And I think perhaps it's also true for food, but it's definitely I think true for technology in that moment where suddenly you have maybe tried to do the thing that you have heard is best. Maybe you've tried to say like, yeah, you can eat whatever is available and there's chips on the plate and a sandwich and an
mm-hmm,
apple and then they eat only the chips and then later they say something rude. It's like you said, it's like we're going to immediately kind of connect those things together, and I think a lot of
right.
it again is coming back from that shame, this guilt
Mm-hmm,
of like it's my fault,
right.
right? I'm trying to solve it. I need to solve the puzzle, right? Because
Mm-hmm,
we're always in this place of like must always do best for our kids. Again, that's a
mm-hmm,
good impulse, but I think sometimes it becomes difficult for us to manage. And then associate with it like, oh, okay, they're saying this thing, it must be because they didn't eat enough protein and they ate too many chips and I let them eat the chips, therefore it's me. I'm the problem.
mm-hmm,
Right. And so we kind of have to lash out and find something like
mm-hmm.
to blame in that moment. We don't want to blame our kid, so we kind of
Yeah,
blame like the next thing up the chain.
yeah,
Um, but again, it's like, okay, well, tomorrow lunch is going to happen again. So what are we going to do? Are we going to not serve chips? Because we also know scarcity mindset is very real. That also
yes,
applies to food and technology. Uh, and often when we are trying to not have our kids get obsessed with something like technology, we inadvertently end up making them more preoccupied with it because we make it off limits.
yeah.
And so that's not going to help us either. But if instead we were to say, like, hey, what'd you notice? It seemed like you maybe were feeling hungry after that, where we just have a conversation, right? And then use
Mm-hmm,
that information. Also, that's going to serve our kid a lot better as they
mm-hmm,
are like developing into their own person. Like we want them to be able to think like, how did I feel? What do I need? And we
yeah,
want them to be able to do that for food and for technology, and for all parts of their lives. And I think it is scary because it feels like a loss of control. And I
mm-hmm,
empathize with that very deeply. That
mm-hmm,
it feels like, well, but if I let them make that choice, they might make the wrong choice. Yeah, that's
mm-hmm,
and that's part of the point, I think, sometimes is to allow them to do that within boundaries that are appropriate, right? I'm
mm-hmm.
not going to put the whole bag of Ruffles on the table and say that can be your whole dinner,
Mhm.
right? I'm going to put it on the plate with other things.
Yeah.
I can say, hey, in the rest of our afternoon today, we're going to uh, make cookies for the neighbor and we need to finish your homework and we need to sweep the floor and we can play Minecraft. Which do you want to do first? And they might choose Minecraft first and they might not want to stop it. And we'll still say, oh, we still have to have time for other things. But
Mhm.
we can still frame it from this place of this is another part of our lives so that
Yeah.
they're realizing that these things can coexist with each other,
Yeah.
figure out how it works for them.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I had several thoughts. Let's see if I can hold on to them. One thing that I think is also staying on this like food and tech analogy that I think is a huge struggle is that there are some things that still, it's very hard for a lot of people to really be neutral about, like, you know, if my child eats a ton of sugar, then that feels different than if they eat a ton of vegetables, right? That might be what someone is thinking. Like, well, there is a difference in what purpose that how that is going to affect them, just as if my child spends 3 hours on Minecraft versus 3 hours playing outside, they feel different in terms of like benefits and potential risks. That it is hard to access that like true neutrality.
But those aren't moral.
Mm-hmm.
What you're describing isn't moral.
Mm.
You're saying they have different nutritional value. Yeah,
Mm.
those aren't moral.
I see.
So, like, am I going to put equal amounts by weight of all foods on the plate? No, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I put one serving of chips and I put, an approximate one serving of each thing, those are also going to be different amounts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we literally had this conversation in my house the other day about caloric density because my kid was asking about like what's the most caloric food, and I was like, we have to talk about density.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I know that, right, or maybe I've had that conversation with my kid, I mentioned, talking about like the purpose. It's like, okay, if we're eating lunch and we're going to like a marathon afternoon of like a birthday party and a this and a that, and we know like it's gonna be intense and
Mm.
high energy, and they're not gonna come up for air, right? Except for
Mm-hmm.
maybe like a bite of icing in the next 5 hours, then we're gonna talk about that,
Mm.
right? Here's what lunch looks like right now, and here's why. Because here's
Mm-hmm.
what the rest of our day looks like. Right? There's a lot of executive functioning built into that. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like proprioception built into that. And we don't want that to live only in our brain. We want that to be something that they're also being aware of too.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we know, okay, like we cannot have just like all fast energy foods in this meal, then
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to serve them.
Yeah.
Right, but that doesn't mean that those foods are bad, like,
Right.
in their morality, and then we can talk about nutritional difference. We
Mm-hmm.
can talk about, "Hey, we've had a morning where we've been sitting on the couch all day long and reading books and playing games and not moving our bodies much, and I've had a lot of fun with you, and now it's time to move our bodies.
Yeah.
So, do
Yeah.
you wanna go outside? Do you wanna ride bikes?" But that's very different than, "No, you can't play Minecraft. You've been sitting around all day long. Minecraft's just more sitting," right? Like,
Mm.
those are the same end goal, but they're
Mm-hmm.
accomplished very differently. One of those is it's important to do different things in the day and pay attention to what my body needs, and one of those is Minecraft is bad because I'm
Mm-hmm.
sitting.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious how, so I know you break out, you have the ABCs and you break out access, behavior, and content. And content specifically, like I imagine some people listening thinking, well, there are some things that you do on a screen that I have moral thoughts on and moral feelings about. I'm curious, how does that play into the neutrality piece?
So the sort of division of responsibility model with food is Ellen Satter's model of an adult decides what is available and when, like
Mm-hmm.
what food is available in a meal and when. And a
Mm-hmm.
child decides what to eat of what's available. And there's another part of that that's very important that I think applies to technology, which is a child also decides how to feel about what options are presented to them.
Yeah.
And they are very good at that part of their job, arguably too good at times, and that part is hard.
Yeah.
And I say that for myself as well. And the
Yeah.
reason I bring that up is that if there is something that I am not okay with my child having access to, food, clothing, friends, technology, media, like coloring supply, I mean, and name it, right? I
Mm-hmm.
am in control of what's in my home. We have a job. They have a job. Our
Mm-hmm.
job is we decide what's available and when, and their job is that they operate within the rules and the boundaries that we set. So, if I have a moral opposition to something, then I can decide it's not available, and I can
Mm-hmm.
decide that we're not going to do that. Maybe forever, maybe right now, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and depending on what it is and the reason, right? There might be different ways of talking about that. It could be as simple as like, I'm not comfortable with that, or if that's not available, or that's not available right now,
Mm-hmm.
right? And depending on your child, the age of your child, what kind of conversation we're talking about, that could become a more nuanced conversation.
Yeah.
I think that becomes really granular depending on what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But me having a moral opposition to something, if I were to allow that thing and then moralize it, well, then that's on me because I'm kind of asking my kid to do my job,
Mm,
right? Like if I allow them to have access to something that I have a moral opposition to, and then I'm kind of upset that they've chosen that thing, well, they're holding up their end of the bargain.
mm,
Their job is to work within the boundaries we've created. If I
mhm,
put chips on the plate and then I spend the whole meal upset that they're eating chips, I mean, they didn't put chips on the plate. Right.
mhm.
And I say this knowing that's a lot easier said than done, and that's hard. Right.
Right.
But if I am every single time I say that they can do whatever they want in the afternoon and then they play Minecraft, if I spend that whole time feeling resentful of the fact they're playing Minecraft,
Mhm,
well, unfortunately, the person in control of that is me. And so I can change how I say that. I would also argue that's not, I mean, depending on how that's coming up, that's not even a content issue. That's an access issue.
right.
Right? We talk about like my ABCs of screen time, of access, behavior, and content, as you said. Um, if it's like, oh, I wish they would stop watching that one YouTube channel over all other YouTube channels. Okay, that
Mhm,
is content. And if I've said that YouTube channel is okay, then they're holding up their end of the bargain. And the only other
mhm.
option I really have is to not say that one's okay.
Right.
And that's hard, but that is also within my job and within
Mhm,
my rights to do. And it will
mhm.
be within their rights to not like it, unfortunately.
Yeah. So the neutrality is not necessarily about the content, but is about the, like, screen in general, the screen use in general.
I mean, it's all aspects of it. I can conjure in my mind something that my child likes that I don't like, but moralizing that to me doesn't make my choice to allow it or not allow it any easier. Maybe it does for somebody, which is, if that does, then I guess try it, see how it goes.
Mm,
But I think for me, it helps to think long term. Like, okay, eventually my child is going to be an adult who is going to have access to ostensibly all content,
right.
right? So if I am moralizing by thinking of it as like, oh, I just cannot have them watching that one YouTube channel because it's bad, right? Like I just don't want them to watch that thing because I've decided it's just a bad field like thing.
Mhm,
Then to me that it kind of flattens the whole conversation. It just makes it like, "Oh, that thing bad. It's off limits."
mhm.
And most of the time, there's more to it than that. Like, I think about even something that would be, I mean, really, like, obviously demonstrably pretty bad, like, something that's going in, like, a really conspiratorial what we hear right now is a sort of, like, red pill, like,
Right.
area where it can
Yeah.
kinda get kids down that path.
Yeah.
Even something like that, at some point, I need to protect my child by shielding them from something because they are not yet ready to talk about the nuances of that thing. But
Mhm,
if all I think is like, "Oh, that thing's terrible," I'm just gonna, like, not allow that. That thing's terrible. Okay, well, we have to be sure that we are not inadvertently passing the responsibility of navigating that thing onto our future child.
mm,
Because at a certain point, they're going to have access to that thing.
mhm,
And if we haven't equipped them with the tools and skills they need to be able to navigate that thing, then we've kind of taken an abstinence only approach.
mhm.
And we have a pretty good body of evidence that doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
So if instead I'm like, okay, I don't want my kid watching Andrew Tate videos. Sorry if I'm offending some Andrew Tate fans in the audience. I don't want my kid watching Andrew Tate videos. Okay, why? I don't
Mhm,
like him. Okay, I mean, sure. Why else? He's dangerous. Why? He's
mhm,
misogynist. Okay, we're getting somewhere. He's a
mhm,
misogynist. Why don't I want my kid to watch a misogynist? This sounds absurd, but like, just follow the thread.
mhm,
Because I don't want my kid to become a misogynist. Okay, so what are the conversations I need to be having with my child? Because Andrew Tate isn't going to find my kid on the street and talk to my kid, right?
mhm,
But kids who watch Andrew Tate are going to. And my kid is going to encounter misogyny in the world,
mhm,
right? I can shield my kid from Andrew Tate. I can't shield my kid from misogyny.
mhm,
So if instead I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to be showing him my kid content that is platforming this. I totally get that. And How do I build my child's skills of critical thinking so that when they encounter a misogynist argument, they can recognize it?
Mhm.
And that, frankly, has nothing to do with YouTube or technology or video games. And it
Mhm.
has more to do with just critical conversations. And
Yeah.
we can have those conversations on technology, off technology, in
Yeah.
books, right? In so many parts of our lives. And then we can talk about how that messaging shows up in media, in social norms,
Mhm.
in things we observe. That's what I mean more about the neutrality is like, obviously, I mean, I'm not a secret Andrew Tate fan, but just going like, "Oh, well, that's bad. I don't want my kid to ever see that." I have to make sure that I am thinking of the skills that they'll need to navigate that thing when they
Mhm.
eventually encounter it, whether that
Right.
is on a screen or sort of by proxy somewhere else in the
Right.
world.
And someplace that comes up a lot is around porn, right? You can want them to
Mm.
not see porn all you want, but at some point they're going to encounter it. And so thinking about, what skills do they need? What nuance and information do they need to be able to navigate that when it happens?
Right, and, you, way back at the beginning, when you were talking about Minecraft and seeing the validity of, like, a child's interest, one of the things that I think is really important from that is that when we're viewing these things as neutral, we are more likely to see the celebrations that come out of it. It
Mm,
doesn't mean that we will necessarily feel the same way our kid does,
right.
right? Like, if they have put in a ton of effort into a thing and it is in the real world, I think we are a little bit more likely to
Yeah.
validate that and see it
Yeah.
as worthy of praise. But to a child, well, not just to a child. I mean, as someone who's played video games, that's very true. Like the work you put into the thing is still the work you put into the thing, and you're still proud of it.
Yeah.
And so if we are able to view it as neutral, I think it's easier to see like, oh, they worked hard at a thing. I can be happy that they are feeling good about working hard at a thing.
Mhm.
And if we are able to validate and celebrate the things that feel good and feel celebratory and feel safe, then we are also setting the framework so that they know they can come to us when something is unsafe.
Yeah.
Because if they can't come to us when something feels good, why would they come to us when something feels bad? If
Yeah.
we blame the screen when they do something good, why would we not do that when they do something bad? Right?
Yeah.
Like if they come to us with something they built in Minecraft and we're like, "Oh yeah, cool, but would have been better if it like even if it's in our head, right? Like,
Yeah.
but would have been better if it was on paper, right?"
Right.
Like, I mean, they pick up on that pretty effectively. Uh,
Yeah.
so if they come to us then and say, "Hey, this kid in the chat used this word and I don't know what it is, and it's like a slur, right?
Mhm.
If we don't have that neutrality, we are much more likely to go, it's Minecraft's problem, it's Fortnite's problem,
Mhm.
it's Discord's problem. No, it's not. Like that's the delivery mechanism. If
Right.
your kid was talking to somebody on a landline phone and they use that word, would you blame a landline phone? Probably not.
Right.
Right? Instead, we'd be talking about, "Ooh, can we talk to that kid?" Or "How do we keep you safe?" Or "Let's talk about that word."
Yeah.
And so the neutrality is seeing through to like, what's the skill or what is this doing or what's the purpose?
Mhm.
And I think it's a lot easier to start from that and then like let it kind of perseverate to
Yeah.
other parts of our lives. And I think if we can do that for the positives, it becomes easier to do it for the negatives.
Yeah. What's the need and what's the purpose? And also something that I heard you say that I want to call out is what is your underlying fear? Like really getting
Mm.
into what is your real concern? And it's often deeper than the screen, is what I think you're saying.
Yes, well, and also more productive. Like
Mm.
there's more to do from that if I can really like
Mhm.
drill down and figure out what is my
Mhm.
fear. Because if it's I don't want my kid on that YouTube channel, that kind of like I said, it just flattens the argument. It's like,
Mhm.
well, okay, all I can really do is say no to that. But if it's, oh, I'm worried that they will be susceptible to these things.
Mhm.
Okay, I get that. That is a worthy concern.
Yeah.
There's reason to be concerned about that.
Yeah.
And that's a skill issue. And
Mm.
I don't mean that like derisively that like that means that you've not done enough. I mean it more in that like we're all having to work on these skills. All of us
Yeah.
all the time. We're all having
Yeah.
to work on how we critically evaluate the world.
Mhm.
Um, and so if we're thinking of it that way, then it's a lot easier to see through to what you can do about it. And I think that also feels a lot more empowering. Like
Yeah.
fear, I think ticks a box for us. It makes, if it's like, oh, I found the problem, then it's like neat and tidy and I'm found the problem.
Right.
I'll keep it away and over there. And now my kid is safe. But it's not empowering.
Mm.
Right, I can't really do much from that,
Yeah.
except just, like, sheltering it
Yeah.
away. But if I can drill down to, like, what's the skill, what is the real concern, and how can I address that,
Yeah.
that feels much more empowering for me as
Yeah.
a parent.
One of the fears that I think a lot of parents have, and I think this may be like a morality thing, a sort of conflict with neutrality, is that when in terms of skills, that there is something inherent to screens and maybe especially some types of screen use. So video games, YouTube, social media, that it is designed to sort of, what would be the word, to like go around your skills, that it's not about skills, that these things are designed to hook you, they're designed to make it hard to put them down, and that it's hard to have the skill. I mean, even as an adult, it's hard for me to put it down. And that this is, I think, a big kind of non-neutral narrative that a lot of parents worry about. And I'm curious if you have sort of words of wisdom or insight around that specifically.
One of the things that I say a lot in this area is if you are worried about something related to technology, take the technology out of it and you'll see the skill that needs addressing. So, what you're describing is predatory design.
Hmm.
That is not unique to technology.
Hmm.
Advertising uses predatory design. Food, snack foods, right? You're talking
Mm-hmm.
about chips earlier. I'm s- I'm not going to not serve chips, but we can talk about, hey, did you notice how you could eat this whole bag of chips and still be hungry? Why is
Hmm.
that? Or things that are really
Yeah.
intentionally designed to make us override our body's satiety cues,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's not even unique to snack foods.
Yeah.
Right? Like why do they constantly come out with new apple and grape varieties? To make us buy more of them,
Yeah.
right? This is predatory design. I had
Mm-hmm.
a reel I did recently where I was talking about how when I was a young kid, like 6 or 7, I went to a carnival and I was playing like the milk bottle toss and did it way too many times. Like my mom fed
Yeah.
me too many dollars. And then eventually she got frustrated and was like, I'll give you another dollar, but you cannot play this game. But I just read that as like, I'm annoying her and I'm not good at it. Like, it's me. Right.
Mm.
And literally, like last year, so like 30 plus years later, my kid was watching a Mark Rober video in which he actually goes through the physics and engineering of carnival games and what makes them impossible to win. And I'm like, oh, would you looky there? When we give kids information about how something is designed, we empower them to
Yeah.
understand how to navigate it appropriately. Because
Mm.
now, if my kid sees a milk bottle toss, my kid is like, "Oh yeah, you can't win that." It's lost its appeal. It actually does the opposite.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, to be honest, Goosebumps books from my youth are designed in a predatory way because they write cliffhanger endings and I stayed up way later than I wanted to. It's the
Yes.
same.
Yeah.
And people are going to hear this and go, "No, it's not the same." I mean, I'm not saying it's literally the same,
Right.
but like it is still trying to get you to consume more than you might otherwise want to.
Right.
And so that again is okay, how do we talk about that? And that could
Mhm.
be modeling. It could be like I am trying to read a book before it is due back to the library right now. So I am like literally like kind of overriding myself on purpose. But also it's like written in a way that is overly compelling.
Yeah.
And even that of like, oh, I stayed up way too late last night because every time I tried to reach the end of a chapter, it just kept making me want to read more. And now I'm really tired.
Yeah.
So if I really want to read that book, I'm going to need to do it before I go to bed so that I can be tired and go to bed. Well, I've
Right.
just talked about how to do something I like that also compels me to override my body's cues in a way that won't interfere with my sleep.
Yeah.
That can apply to insert whatever thing here.
Yeah.
So are
Yeah.
those conversations going to be different when we're talking about like microtransactions? Yes. But going back to the skill or the through line, I think makes it feel less like scary to parents because
Mm.
I think they think, oh, it's technology and I don't know how it works and I don't know how to talk about it. Like, yes, you do.
Mhm.
Take the tech out, drill down to like the underlying skill, and what in your life could you talk about that with? Start there.
Mhm. I love that. That's a really, yeah, I hadn't thought about, I mean, I have thought about it with food. So I think that there is a similarity with how a lot of people feel about what they might call junk food, or, right, that these things are designed to leave you with the taste of more, as my
Sure.
dad likes to say, right? And so there is this sort of judgment of that, right? That these things are evil in some way, they are bad in some way because they are trying to suck you in.
Right. And but I think also some of that is really hard for people who, like, if we struggle with that for ourselves,
Mhm.
I think we also, and I'm speaking for myself, like, it's hard not to kind of project that fear forward
Totally.
onto our kids. And I think then we also have to ask ourselves, okay, well, what contributes to why that's hard for me? And to
Mhm.
go back to thinking about like kind of the era in which we were raised, it's like, oh,
Mhm.
well, there was a lot of moralizing of food.
Mhm.
So, like, did that help? Like, I've been sitting with this for myself lately and realizing that there are a lot of times where in the evening I will often snack and not really want to, and or really like that's not actually what my body seems to want. And
Yeah.
when I was trying to pay more attention to it, I was like, actually, what my body really wants is to eat fruit. And then I was realizing that, like, I never would have done that as a kid because fruit would have been a good food, and I wanted to,
Mm.
like, get away with eating bad foods. And
Yes.
so even that, is
Yeah.
something that, I'm kind of carrying forward. But I think sometimes we have to be able to observe and see for our own kids, if there is an area of life in which you feel like you are neutral, how does your kid navigate that thing?
Yeah.
And obviously, those parts of life might seem a little less third rail like than things like technology, but I think it can serve well to kind of calm us down sometimes. Like just the other day, I put a movie on and we got like halfway through, and my kid was like, I'm done. I'm good. And got up and walked away.
Mm.
And, part of me thought, like, oh, I kind of wanted to watch the rest of the movie. And the other part
Yeah.
of me thought, like, oh, like, they knew they were done, and
Yeah.
they wanted to move on and do something different.
Yeah.
So, finding even a little way to kind of test that for ourselves in a way that
Yeah.
still feels safe, right? I'm not
Yeah.
saying, like, just tell them they can play video games all day long, but see how that neutrality is something that might influence how your kid navigates something,
Mhm.
and, um, use that kinda to inform your own kind of assumptions around that thing. We have to do our
Yeah.
own relearning, obviously. It's all the time.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think it also brings up, right, what are we modeling? And modeling is an opportunity to explore and work on some of these topics that we're talking about, right? So, like narrating aloud, wow, when I start looking at Instagram at bedtime, it is so hard for me to put it down. I am going to leave my phone
Yes.
over here tonight so that I
Yes.
don't do that, right?
Yes. You are like the one person I have talked to, I think, ever who has actually brought that up. Because I have said that before of like we script when kids are babies and then we stop. And
Mm.
we do it for language development and we're kind of like, oh, we're done. But
Yeah.
with stuff like that, it is so undervalued because
Mm-hmm.
so much of that executive function, sometimes it's like mental labor, what have you, a lot of that then becomes completely invisible. And
Mm-hmm.
our kids from the outside just look at us and we sort of seem like we're kind of being controlled like we're puppets. Like I'm staring at my phone and I robotically put it down and then I go do laundry, right?
Right.
As if someone's like programming me to do so.
Yeah.
And even I that the naming that you just gave, great. I mean, what I said earlier about like, oh, I stayed up too late reading a book, so I'm going to read this book earlier in the day so that I don't stay up too
Right.
late. I did this once when I was playing video games because I was feeling sad, like just in a funk. And I was like, I feel sad. I don't want to feel sad. I'm going to play this video game. I think it might help. I played for
Mm.
like 20, 25 minutes and I paused and said, feel better while I am playing. And as soon as I stop or as soon as I have a moment to think, I'm still sad. This isn't helping me, it's distracting me. So I
Mm.
know that if I actually want to kind of work through this feeling, this isn't actually going to help. I
Yeah.
wish I could play more. It's just not going to help.
Yeah.
So I'm at a good stopping point. I'm going to stop and I'm going to go take a walk. I don't even really want to take a walk, but I don't want to feel
Yeah.
sad and this isn't helping. So I'm going to go try something else.
Yeah.
Right. And even just naming that and just
Yeah.
modeling that. And I think part of it too is being willing to model like messiness.
The
But
imperfections.
right,
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah.
And that I think one of the most powerful things that kids can hear an adult say, a parent or an educator, is I don't know,
Mhm.
or I was wrong, or
Mhm.
I don't know and I'm gonna find out.
Mhm.
Because they know that we're not infallible. Like
Yes. Yeah.
and I think if we're willing to name that, then we're
Yeah.
also showing them that it's okay. Like
Yeah.
it's okay not to know everything.
Yeah.
And we don't want to stay there, but it's okay. And it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to change your mind and it's okay to learn. And
Right.
I think the modeling of that is so important.
Yeah, modeling I think is such like an underrated and powerful tool in our toolkit that often when there is change that we want our kids to make, it is often something that if we look inward that we could work on in our own selves and
Yes.
model that and narrate it, right? And name it and name that growth mindset, right? The trial and error, the I'm going to try this. Like you just that story you just told, right? I'm going to try this and see if it helps. Oh, I tried it and it didn't help, right? I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's getting late. We've been chatting for a long time. I have so much else I would love to talk to you about, but I don't want to take more of your time. Thank you. This has been incredibly insightful and thought-provoking, and I hope that for anyone listening, it has brought up some thoughts and some ideas. I know we didn't get into some of the more practicalities of it. I do recommend buying the book. There are more practicalities in there. Maybe I'll have you on again. I would love to talk about, when should you be concerned about your child's screen time behavior? That's something that comes up so much. So maybe that can be a part two sometime.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up, I love to ask my guests two questions. I'm passionate about connection, not perfection. So, what is something that you do in your life to foster connection, either with yourself or with your kid?
Yeah, I love this. So it probably won't surprise many people to hear that I am going to mention, screens and video games. And I don't expect anyone to be like, I'm going to just take up video games as a hobby. And also the reality, which we didn't really get into, is that screens are often filling in for varying systemic inequities. And so
Yes.
often like we're using screens for a very specific purpose. Like I'm making dinner, I'm writing email, I'm taking a shower, like they're filling in for the
Yes.
presence of a caregiver often, and that is a valid use of them. However, I will say being able to kind of enter their world
Yes.
for 1 or 2 minutes, and it could be showing really genuine, and it could be asking questions, but also your kid, right? So if like, oh my God, that would annoy my kid, then don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It could just be, I'm just gonna sit on the couch silently and just observe what they're doing and
Mm-hmm.
just notice. Right? Because again, from a neutrality perspective, when we have that neutrality, you're probably going to notice things. Like if they're playing with other people, you might be like, oh, wow, they're constantly talking strategy. And where are you? And what are you doing? And where should I be? Or maybe you're thinking, like, wow, they're thinking about 5 different things at once. And they're
Yeah.
gathering this and they're building that. And how did they know to do that? And you might suddenly have questions or wonderings or things that can then transfer off of the screen, which I think can
Mm-hmm.
make the transition itself easier. Like, hey, tell me about this thing that you're building. And then we're just transitioning out. But they still get to be in their world of interest. But I think it also can serve a great purpose of helping us see the transfer of those skills to other parts of their lives so that they
Yeah.
can see the transfer, so
Yeah.
that our kids can go from thinking, I am good at Minecraft to I am good at creativity, right? Because those
Mm.
are wildly different things. We can connect, even if it's just asynchronous and casual, even if it's just an observation, then we can help them see that skill transfer.
Yeah.
so that they can explore that in other parts of their lives. And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's going to substitute for the screen. It can supplement
Yeah.
the screen.
Yeah. So a few things there that I want to call out. So one, yes, I often recommend to clients to spend some time joining your child in their virtual worlds because, this is a whole world of theirs that if you don't know anything about it, first of all, as you said, it's a connection building experience. They have more mastery of it than you do.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's like a beautiful opportunity for them to be the one who is the person who knows more and can
Yes.
teach you. And it also is an opportunity for you to get curious and understand better what is it that they like about this and what is it that they're getting out of it. And
Right.
there's so many great things about it. I also want to call out the first part of what you said. This does not mean that you have to be on the screen with them whenever they're on the screen.
No.
And I want to name and acknowledge, this is a podcast for single parents, and the screen is a useful tool. And we've been talking about the neutrality about it in terms of our kids, but I think there is also this important messaging around neutrality of taking away the shame and stigma of using the screen to support your needs as a parent. And I know you talk about this in the book also, and it's something that certainly comes up a lot in my coaching. Is that is a very real and a very valid reality, and it doesn't have to mean it doesn't mean that you're a bad parent or a bad person,
Absolutely
that
not.
the screen is supporting you in getting some of your needs met.
Absolutely not. Yeah, I'll try not to just like pontificate on my soapbox, but yes, that is everything you said. Just underline it.
Yeah.
And I will make a comparison that I've made before and say, often the messaging is that parents should be like, especially single parents, should be like these perpetual martyrs
Right.
who are just like, I don't know, just try harder,
Mm-hmm.
give more, right?
Mm-hmm.
As if it is just this endless well. And
Mm-hmm.
that is, I mean, there's many things wrong with that, but you matter in the equation, right? The
Yeah.
subtitle of my book is Managing Screen Time to Benefit the Whole Family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm talking about. Because
Yeah.
people would say, like, well, but my kid would play all the time if they wanted to. Right. But that's not going to benefit them. And it's probably not going to benefit you. Right. We have to find something that's
Yeah.
going to benefit everyone.
Right.
And if my kid is playing games or watching TV or using a screen for 30 minutes, an hour in our afternoon or evening, and it is allowing me to meet my needs so I can better meet their needs.
Yeah.
Like if it's allowing me to sit down at the dinner table with a more varied or nutritionally dense meal than I would have been able to make otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
and I am not thinking about the 5 other things I need to be doing because I had no time to do it, that is a benefit to my child, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that is a direct benefit to my child. They are getting
Yeah.
a present, more regulated parent,
Yeah.
and that is a benefit to them. Obviously, at some point, if that hour isn't working and it's causing dysregulation or causing a problem, that's where we get into what can I change, right?
Yeah.
Can I change the access? Can we try 15 fewer minutes? Can I change the content? Can I see if it makes a difference? But that is also why the neutrality is so important, because
Yeah.
the person who thinks I gave a screen, I'm bad, all they're going to think is, I just need to figure it out. I just need to try harder. I just need
Yeah.
to give more of myself. And that is not sustainable.
No, it's not. Yes.
Where,
And
yeah,
it backfires often, right?
yes,
Like
yes.
I often tell the story. I had a client who had like her worst parenting day, and it started because she was exhausted and the kids wanted her attention, and then she snapped and yelled and then felt guilty, and ultimately she took a nap while the kids watched a movie. And I said, "What if at the beginning you had let them watch a movie so you could take a nap?" Right? Would they have done that? Well, yeah, they would have. So what keeps us from doing that?
Right,
Because ultimately they
right,
watched the movie anyway, but then it was
right,
after having this horrible
right,
interaction day where mom feels terrible now. And, you know, so giving yourself permission to meet your needs is a
yeah,
valid use, right? Is a
right.
valid thing to consider. Yeah.
Right. And again, it's balancing that, right? If I'm saying yes to it and I'm saying yes to an amount or a type that isn't working and now my kid's bouncing off the wall and now
Right.
it's not working. Okay. But now because of the neutrality, we can go into it from a perspective of data. Like, what
Mm-hmm.
is this data telling me? Right?
Mm-hmm.
We tried this show for this amount of time and it was a disaster.
Too much, right?
So what's a variable I can change? I can't change that I am a single parent who needs to make dinner. Okay. What can I change? Can we
Mm-hmm.
go outside first? Can we try a different show? Can they, sit closer to me so we can talk while they're watching? Like, there are so many things that we can change
Yeah.
before we get to a place of it's me, I'm the problem, right?
Yep.
Because again, that doesn't empower us and that doesn't
Yep.
help us tomorrow. And that's
Yep.
not going to alleviate these systemic barriers that many people shouldn't be having to navigate anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Shame doesn't solve anything.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. All right. And imperfection, speaking of which, where is there a place in your life that you have embraced imperfection?
I'm not sure if I can think very specifically, but I think acknowledging that, just perfection is not the goal. It doesn't need to be the goal. The
Yeah.
goal can be progress. The goal can be, sometimes I think the goal could be imperfection,
Mm-hmm.
right? Of like, I don't need to project my impossibly high standards that perhaps I've been holding for myself onto everyone around me. I'm
Mm.
speaking for myself here. Uh,
Yes. I think you're not alone. Yeah.
and actually, like, most years I have sort of like a motto for myself in my work life. And one year it was good enough is good enough of like,
Mm-hmm.
find the spot where it's going to be enough and like, and let's work up to there
Yeah.
and then use our energy elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because we only have so much to give
Yep.
and some of it needs to be for us.
So true. Good enough is good enough. Love it. All right. It was such a pleasure to chat with you. Like I said, I could go on for hours. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
That's it for this episode. I am so glad you found your way here. And remember, even if you're on your own, you don't have to do it alone. You've got this.